I love design. I absolutely adore it. Doesn't matter what kind of design it is, I absolutely love design. So even though I'm a digital designer by trade, and maybe a few product designs as well, in the old days, when I used to do my research as a student, I would have to go to a reference section in the library because there was no such thing as the internet. You'd be lucky if you could find the right reference book as well. And I remember also trying to design a product, and I sketched it out on a piece of paper, and I thought to myself, right, now I need to cost this out for my business plan. The only problem was that how do you cost that out? First of all, could you find a manufacturer who would entertain a student with a stupid idea? So it goes to show that perhaps innovation in its own context has changed since when I was younger to what it is today. And that's what I want to bring to your attention, the world of 3D printing. Now, 3D printing is pretty straightforward. It's pretty good stuff. The most recent development in 3D printing is this seaweed filament. They actually haven't decided what they're going to use the filament for, but it's the first ever bio element for 3D printing. But if you notice underneath, you can see all the other types of materials that can be used for 3D printing. So what that means is whenever you're coming up with an idea, you need to understand the composites to which you're going to be using. And of course you can see there's paper, there's wax and all sorts of bits and pieces. So 3D printing can really open up a whole new bag of worms if you love design and you love creating product. So here's some examples, some really good 3D printed examples. Now, I've got to admit, I wouldn't wear one of these myself, even though I could do with some hair. The 3D printing head pieces featured at Vida Congress, which is a big European Congress, and that went down a storm. So that kind of shows you the kind of application. So if there's any fashion designers out there, and you really want to push the boat, that's the way to go. This is one of my favourites. It's a pop-up booth in Tokyo. Actually, it started on January the 14th of this year. Basically, you go in, it will scan you, and then it will produce a little miniature of yourself. How about that? You could put your whole family on your mantelpiece. Absolutely brilliant idea. But also engaging to people. That's the important part about design as well. And as you can see there, you can also get a coloured version and a white version as well, which you can take home and then you can draw the hair on me instead. Okay, this is a really good idea as well. Great for museums, anybody who's in the culture sector. We're looking at basically the Smithsonian Collection offers models. So basically you go online, you can download the particular artwork and then you can take it to, or if you've got your own 3D printer in-house, then you can obviously use that to create those kind of elements. So perhaps heritage has a new meaning now. Heritage can be put forward and engaged from a technology perspective. So that's also available through 3D printing. And I'm sure some of you have heard of the exoskeleton. Basically, an exoskeleton will usually cost about $100,000 or more. Now, these guys in a university in America have managed to create this one, and it costs less than $2,000 by using 3D printing. And if you don't know anything about exoskeletons, basically it makes you superhuman. It means you can lift more than what you can do, you can run more. These are the developments that are coming through from 3D printing technology. This is kind of interesting. It's actually in South Wales, funny enough, so it's only across the water for us or over the bridge. And basically somebody had a really bad accident and they thought, how are we going to do some face reconstruction? Well, what happened was that they basically scanned the side of the face that was looking okay, and they managed to replicate it and duplicate it for the other side. And so what they're doing now in the health sector is producing these types of 3D printing from a tissue perspective, which I'll show you a little bit more later on. Now this is an interesting one. This is for those that are a bit geeky and perhaps love these sort of manga type films and bits and pieces. Ink animals, basically you can go online, you basically grab an animal, you design it, you swish it around, you can just download it as an image, but it's still only a 2D image when you're playing with it. And then basically you print, you press the order button and off it goes, it prints it in 3D, sends it into the post, and you can have your own ink animals. And that goes to show how engagement is going on. And soon enough, I'm sure you'll probably go to the next Lego centre and you'll find Lego will be printing little things like that as they come along. So you can see that from a design perspective, these things are really turning out to be very cool in the context of 3D printing. From a manufacturing perspective, we have the, usually they use ceramic tools to filter perfumes and to reduce the amount of odours that come so they can actually figure out what the end odour is going to be. And the problem is these ceramic things are made out of such fine ceramics that they're very expensive to produce. That's why your perfume is quite expensive. But now they've managed to print these in 3D using certain composites, reducing the cost by over 80%. So we can see from a manufacturing perspective, innovation can really pay off. And of course, let's not forget our schools. Cleveland School up north, basically it has its own 3D printing now. The government is trying to encourage schools to actually bring 3D printing in. This is to ensure that obviously students can get their concepts and their ideas down into that three-dimensional world, which is very important when it comes to us teaching the next generation of designers that are out there in the world. One of my favourites here, Victoria's Secret showcased its 3D printed crystal fabrics. So we can see here that you can now wear your own underwear. Isn't that a great idea for fashion designers though, in the context of that? It doesn't mean that you're going to mass produce it on this scale, but what it does mean is that you can prototype very quickly. And I'll talk a little about prototyping at the end. And of course, no surprise here, it's been estimated this is going to take about 12 months and it will be on the market. Basically, to be able to do this in real time with existing technology, so if you've lost your ear today, you'll be lucky if you can get a new ear within 3 months. That's how long it takes to produce it. But now they can actually 3D print these ears and noses, and you can see how this is going to affect the way that our world is changing. But again, if you're just an innovative individual, you'll be able to look at these particular technologies and see how you can utilize it. Now, I haven't got a use for this at all. I must admit, I find this very strange, but disposable panties, 3D printing, and they are actually hygienic as well. So great for those that obviously get up to some mischief and have to quickly change their underwear. And of course, 3D printed cells. We've seen those coming along now. What that does, it means that it can now replace animal testing. And this has already been done in the labs. And it's a very good way of producing that, and you'd be quite surprised how many labs there are in the southwest. Most of them are in the rural areas where you probably wouldn't know about them. But this again can show you the capacity of what 3D printing can do for business. Now this is one of my big bugbears. I've got a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, and whenever I take them to McDonald's and I get that, excuse my French, crappy toy, and then it goes into the bin literally 30 minutes later, I do think about landfill. So what's interesting about this is that now we can see that suddenly consumer-age products can suddenly be done in real time. So while you're eating your meal, you could actually get your toy printed. And McDonald's are now considering this as part of their sustainability policy. So if you run a business and you do this kind of thing, perhaps you need to rethink. This is a bit of an issue for the American market, but yes, can you believe it or not, there are metals that can be used with 3D printing, so they've managed to produce the first 3D printed metal gun, which obviously tells us that from now on you will be able to produce a gun and it won't be registered with the government and you can shoot anybody you like. But this is another interesting thing in Africa where they did a chocology exhibition. This is using food printers where they can produce different types of scopes. As you know, if we go back 5 years ago, you'd be lucky if you could go into, say, a supermarket and you could get your photograph printed on a cake, and you thought that was cool. And as you can see, some of the 3D stuff that they can come up with chocolate can really make a difference. But there is a consumer market for personalisation, and we live in a personalisation society. So again, we can see where those applications can work. And of course, no surprise here, obviously using them for the sake of animals as well, such as this brace for a sea turtle flipper, which is quite interesting. And of course, as you can imagine, those flippers are unique to turtles. So you can't have one size fits all. It has to be unique to the animal. Put one of those in the animal sanctuary, and they'll be able to create these braces as and when they need them, reducing their costs considerably. This is a car that's been 3D printed, and it's 10 gallons of fuel. It's called Irby 2. The first one was just as successful, but they had to redesign it slightly. This was also designed in America, but look, it looks like a real car, and yet it's been printed with 3D printing. So we can see the capacity of where design can go when using 3D printers. Now this is a very interesting thing. If you don't know who Etsy is, you should do. Go online, type in Etsy. It's basically a website that confirms that everything you buy is handmade. So it's basically trying to sell unique art-based products. But what they've decided to do now is to integrate a policy that now says that if you've designed something and you've 3D printed it, it will be classified as handmade. So it goes to show now that if there's any artists in the room, skill up. Start using these because you can really make a real difference. And of course, here's a 3D printed titanium sunglasses or glasses. It's kind of interesting because, as you know, the glasses industry makes lots of money. Well, you might be able to design your own soon, take that into Specsavers and say, no, I love my own glasses, thank you very much. So again, we can see where personalisation comes in, but it also means that the manufacturer won't actually waste product because they can print on demand. Whereas manufacturing processes at the moment, they will actually have to calculate the amount of number that they need to manufacture before they break even. Hence, that's why they always end up with surplus stock. Of course, we mentioned again about artificial tissues. This is another particular one where they're actually printing it for DNA testing and using gelatin as a bio-link ink in those particular processes. So again, the next time you go to hospital, you'll be quite surprised, depending on obviously the ailment that you have, how these things can play a role inside of that. So again, you know, if you're in the medical sector, that would be something to look at. And of course, no surprise there, the fashion industry is well into 3D printing. This was at a particular catwalk in Prague last year where somebody had designed this pair of shoes and they were obviously shown within that fashion show. So again, we can see the applications. You've got to keep thinking to yourself, wow, I'm full of ideas, but I can't take my ideas anywhere. Well, obviously now you can. And of course, no surprise there, they're now printing bones. My father had 3 hip replacements. That's weird because you only have 2 when you're born. And the reason being because there was a manufacturer's default in one of them. And they do actually make these things, literally one size fits all. But now what they're doing is they're actually printing bones unique to you. So you can see how that application is applied from a 3D printing perspective. You see KI, basically your child can produce a drawing. I don't think you can see it very well, but there's a pumpkin drawing in the corner there. And basically your kid's drawing will be basically sent off and it will produce a 3D toy of that particular drawing. So that means that your child can connect in a 2-dimensional and a 3-dimensional world and actually has applications from an education perspective because they can see that translation actually occurring within that process. I can't believe this as well. They think that they can now print houses within 20 hours. Now, these 3D printers are humongous. They're literally factory size. There's only about 3 of them in the whole world, so don't run and think that you can have your house printed. As you know, very large architects anyway don't use model makers anymore. They use 3D printers to create their concepts for model making. So we can see that application again coming in. So if you're a designer and you want to design your own little bubble shed for the end of your garden, think 3D printing next time. That's the way to do it. And of course, when we talk about the types of materials that can be used for 3D printing, this is brilliant. I mean, I know quite a few jewellery designers. A lot of them are artisan, unknown, but they'll be there with their solder irons and their kits. But now that actually they can design them in 3D. So what that means is they can sketch out the design on a piece of paper. If they haven't got the skills, they can take that to a CAD drawer who will replicate that into a 2-dimensional drawing. That 2-dimensional drawing will be input into the printer and it will produce that 3D character. So again, we can see the commercial applications of being innovative and also collaborating your ideas with those with the right skills such as CAD designers and 3D printers. Obviously, 3D food printing, no surprise there. There are lots of customizations of food. Sometimes 3D food printing is where the printing is actually done on top of an already existing food product, or in this particular case where they're shaping products to look like, I don't know, a Halloween lollipop or something of that context. But again, what it means is that now a small artisan food producer can have a 3D food printer and produce these on demand rather in mass. So again, you can see the applications from a commercial perspective. And of course, we all love design and we all love art, and so therefore we can see this 3D fungus chair that was purely printed using a 3D printer. And of course, bikes, we love that. We have quite a few bike manufacturers actually in the southwest. So again, it's about creating new designs and using new composites to create those particular products. What about replica cars? We saw the Smithsonian element earlier on. We can see that how that can be applied. So if you've got something old that you might have inherited that might have a patent behind it, perhaps that might be the case. And then of course we start to see bones, and most importantly 3D printing of Forbidden City. 980 buildings this takes. So they're doing that to create 3D printing, so you can see the tourism and heritage element in there. And finally, Asda has decided it's going to start producing 3D printing services, so you can take your little memory card with your child's drawing and you can actually get things printed. So to finally finish off, if you're going to invest money, try in 3D stots because they are rising quite considerably. And get designing, get it scanned, get it drawn up and get it made. And in our industry, we call that rapid prototyping. Type rapid prototyping into Google, you'll find loads of companies who will say, give us your design, we'll 3D print it, send you a hard copy. If you like it, we can talk. That's me, Andrew Knutt, and 3D printing. Thank you.